Title: Eternal Shadows, A Love Beyond Time. Monica had always been drawn to the mysteries of the night. The way shadows danced in the moonlight fascinated her, as if they held secrets of a world just beyond her reach. Growing up in a small town, she had heard whispers of an ancient technique known as the shadow technique. It was said to be a powerful art, one that could connect two souls on a deeper, almost mystical level. Intrigued by the stories, Monica vowed to uncover its secrets. Monica was a woman of many talents. She was intelligent, creative, and always curious. Her friends often described her as the one who could make the ordinary seem extraordinary. But despite her outward confidence, Monica carried a quiet longing within her. A longing for a love that was as deep and mysterious as the shadows she adored. One warm summer evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Monica found herself wandering through an ancient forest just outside her town. The trees towered above her, their leaves whispering secrets in the gentle breeze. She had heard that this forest was where the shadow technique had been practiced centuries ago, and she was determined to learn its secrets. As she walked deeper into the woods, the light began to fade, and the shadows grew longer. Suddenly, Monica felt a presence behind her. She turned quickly, her heart racing, but there was no one there. Only the shadows twisting and turning as if they were alive. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling slightly. There was no response, only the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. But then out of the darkness a figure appeared. A tall, handsome man with dark hair and piercing blue eyes. He moved with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly, his steps silent on the forest floor. "My name is Ethan," he said softly, his voice like velvet. "I've been waiting for you, Monica." Monica's heart skipped a beat. She had never met Ethan before, but there was something familiar about him, something that made her feel as if she had known him for a lifetime. "How do you know my name?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Ethan smiled, a smile that sent a shiver down her spine. "I've known you for a long time, Monica. You may not remember, but we've met before, in the shadows." Monica felt a strange pull toward Ethan, as if he was a magnet and she was drawn to him. She wanted to understand what he meant, but before she could ask, he stepped closer, his eyes locking onto hers. "The shadow technique," Ethan continued, "is an ancient art that allows two souls to connect in a way that transcends the physical world. It requires trust, vulnerability, and a deep understanding of the shadows that dwell within each of us." Monica was captivated by his words. She had always felt that there was more to life than what met the eye, and now standing before Ethan, she felt as though she was on the brink of discovering something truly extraordinary. Ethan reached out his hand, and Monica hesitated for a moment before placing hers in his. His touch was warm and comforting, and she felt a surge of energy pass between them. "Close your eyes," Ethan whispered, "and trust me." Monica obeyed, closing her eyes and allowing herself to be enveloped by the darkness. She could feel Ethan's presence beside her, his hand still holding hers. As she stood there, she began to feel a strange sensation, a tingling in her chest, as if something was awakening within her. Now, Ethan's voice was soft and close to her ear. Focus on the shadows around you. Feel them, embrace them, and let them guide you. Monica did as he said, letting her mind drift into the darkness. The shadows seemed to come alive, swirling around her like a gentle breeze. She could feel them caressing her skin, whispering secrets in her ear. It was as if they were showing her a world beyond the physical, a world where anything was possible. And then she felt Ethan's lips brush against hers, soft, warm, and full of promise. It was a kiss unlike any she had ever experienced, a kiss that seemed to reach deep into her soul and awaken something within her. The shadows wrapped around them, pulling them closer together, until it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. As they kissed, Monica felt a surge of emotions, desire, love, and a deep, overwhelming connection to Ethan. It was as if their souls were merging, becoming one in the darkness. She could feel his heartbeat, his breath, and every thought and feeling he had ever had. It was beautiful, intense, and utterly mesmerizing. When they finally pulled away, Monica's heart was racing, her breath coming in short gasps. She opened her eyes to find Ethan staring at her with a look of pure adoration. "Now you understand," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The shadow technique is not just about the physical connection. It's about connecting on a deeper level. A level that transcends time and space. It's about finding someone who understands you completely, who sees the shadows within you and loves you for them." Monica felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had never experienced anything like this before, and she knew that she would never be the same. Ethan had shown her a world she had only dreamed of. A world where love was more than just a fleeting emotion. It was a force that could bind two souls together for eternity. As the night wore on, Monica and Ethan sat together in the forest, talking, laughing, and sharing their deepest fears and desires. The connection between them grew stronger with each passing moment, and Monica knew that she had found something truly special, something that would stay with her forever. But as the first light of dawn began to break through the trees, Ethan turned to her, his expression serious. "I must go now," he said softly. "The shadows are fading, and I can only stay as long as they do." Monica's heart sank. She didn't want him to leave. Not now, not ever. But she knew that he was right. The shadows were retreating, and with them, the magic of the night was slipping away. "Will I see you again?" she asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Ethan smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "The shadows are always with you, Monica. And so am I. Whenever you need me, just close your eyes and let the shadows guide you. I will always be there waiting for you." With that, he leaned in and kissed her one last time. A kiss that was full of love, longing, and a promise that they would meet again. And then, as the first rays of sunlight touched the forest floor, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving Monica standing alone. But she was not alone, not really. For in her heart she carried the memory of that night, the memory of Ethan, and the knowledge that love could be found even in the darkest of places. Monica returned to her life, but she was forever changed. The shadows had taught her that love was more than just a fleeting emotion. It was a connection that transcended time and space, a connection that could never be broken. And whenever she felt lonely or afraid, she would close her eyes and let the shadows guide her, knowing that Ethan was always there, waiting for her in the darkness. Monica couldn't shake the feeling that the night in the forest with Ethan was more than just a fleeting encounter. It stayed with her, haunting her dreams and thoughts during the day. Every time she closed her eyes, she could still feel the warmth of Ethan's kiss, the way the shadows had wrapped around them, making them one. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, she began to wonder if it had all been a dream, a beautiful, haunting dream. Monica tried to move on with her life. She threw herself into her work, spending long hours at her office, hoping to drown out the thoughts of Ethan and the shadows. But no matter how hard she tried, the memories kept coming back, like a song stuck on repeat. One evening, after a particularly long day, Monica decided to visit the forest again. It was a place that had become sacred to her, a place where she felt closest to Ethan. As she walked through the trees, the memories of that night came flooding back, and she felt the familiar tug of the shadows. She closed her eyes just as Ethan had taught her, and let the darkness take over. The shadows wrapped around her, pulling her into their embrace, and for a moment, she thought she could feel Ethan's presence again. But when she opened her eyes, she was alone. Monica's heart sank. She had hoped that by returning to the forest, she would be able to find Ethan again, to feel the connection they had shared that night. But now, standing in the darkness, she felt more alone than ever. As she turned to leave, she heard a voice, soft, familiar, and full of emotion. "Monica!" She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She turned slowly, and there, standing in the shadows, was Ethan. But something was different this time. He looked distant, as if he was struggling with something. "Ethan!" Monica's voice was filled with relief and joy. She ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. But as she embraced him, she felt a coldness, a chill that hadn't been there before. She pulled back, looking into his eyes, and saw something that made her heart ache: sadness, regret, and something else she couldn't quite place. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice trembling with concern. Ethan sighed, his gaze dropping to the ground. "Monica, there's something I need to tell you. Something I've been keeping from you." Monica's heart skipped a beat. She had feared this moment, feared that there was something Ethan wasn't telling her. But she had never expected it to be this. "What is it?" she whispered. Ethan took a deep breath, his hands trembling as he held hers. "I'm not from this world, Monica. The night we met, I was sent here by the shadows, sent to find someone who could help me. Someone who could help me escape." Monica felt a lump form in her throat. Escape? From what? Ethan's eyes met hers, and she could see the pain in them. "From the curse that binds me to the shadows. I was once like you, Monica, a normal person living a normal life. But I made a mistake that cost me everything. The shadows offered me a way out, but in return, I had to give up my humanity." I became one of them, a shadow bound to the night, and I've been searching for a way to break the curse ever since. Monica's heart broke at Ethan's words. She couldn't imagine the pain he must have endured, the loneliness he must have felt. "But how can I help you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's grip on her hands tightened. "The only way to break the curse is to find someone who loves me for who I am, despite the darkness that surrounds me. Someone who can see past the shadows and into my heart." That night in the forest, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. You gave me hope, Monica, and for that, I'm forever grateful. But I can't ask you to do this. It's too dangerous, too risky. Ethan's voice wavered, filled with the weight of his curse. The shadows, they consume those who try to get too close. They've taken so much from me already. I don't want to lose you too, Monica. Monica's heart raced as she listened to his words. She could see the pain etched in his face, the fear that he might lose her, just as he had lost so much before. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw something else: vulnerability, a glimmer of the man who had been trapped beneath the curse for so long. "I'm not afraid," Monica whispered, her voice steady despite the emotions churning inside her. "I can see who you really are, Ethan, and I'm not going to let the shadows take that away. If there's a chance to break this curse, I want to take it. I want to fight for you, for us." Ethan shook his head, torn between hope and fear. "But what if the shadows consume you? What if you become like them, lost in the darkness with no way back?" Monica squeezed his hands, grounding him in the moment. "I won't let that happen. We'll face the shadows together. You don't have to carry this burden alone anymore." Ethan stared at her, his heart pounding with a mix of emotions he hadn't felt in years: hope, fear, and a deep, overwhelming love. He had been alone for so long, trapped in the darkness, that he had forgotten what it felt like to have someone by his side, someone willing to fight for him. He pulled Monica into his arms, holding her close as if trying to memorize the feeling of her warmth, her light. "I don't deserve you," he whispered against her hair, his voice thick with emotion. Monica pulled back slightly, just enough to look into his eyes. "You deserve to be loved, Ethan, just as much as anyone else. And I'm here willing to give you that love, no matter what it takes." Ethan closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the intensity of his feelings. He knew that the path ahead would be dangerous, that the shadows would fight to keep their hold on him. But for the first time in years, he felt something stronger than the fear. He felt hope. Taking a deep breath, he nodded, making a decision he had been too afraid to make for so long. "Then we'll do it together," he said softly, his voice filled with resolve. "We'll face the shadows and we'll find a way to break the curse." Monica smiled, her heart swelling with love for the man who had finally allowed himself to hope again. "Together," she echoed, sealing their promise with a tender kiss. As their lips met, the shadows around them seemed to pulse with energy, as if sensing the shift in Ethan's resolve. But this time, instead of shrinking back in fear, Ethan stood tall, holding Monica close as they faced the darkness together. The journey ahead would be long and fraught with danger, but they had each other. And with that, they had something stronger than any curse: love. Monica's heart sank as she opened her eyes to the empty forest. The once comforting embrace of the shadows now felt cold and distant. She stood there alone, surrounded by the towering trees, and for the first time, she truly felt the weight of her longing. The hope that had carried her back to this place was fading, replaced by a deep, aching sadness. She wandered through the forest, her footsteps heavy on the moss-covered ground. The moonlight filtered through the leaves, casting ghostly patterns on the path ahead. Monica felt lost, not just in the forest, but in her own emotions. The connection she had felt with Ethan had been so real, so powerful, that the thought of never seeing him again was unbearable. As she walked, memories of Ethan flooded her mind. The way his eyes had looked into hers, the way his voice had soothed her fears, and the way his touch had made her feel truly seen for the first time. She had never believed in love at first sight, but with Ethan it had been different. It wasn't just love. It was a bond that transcended the physical world, a connection of souls. Tears welled up in Monica's eyes as she thought about how she might never feel that way again. How could she go back to her ordinary life after experiencing something so extraordinary? The very thought made her chest tighten with despair. The shadows, sensing her distress, seemed to come alive around her, swirling in gentle patterns, trying to comfort her. But even their touch couldn't soothe the emptiness she felt inside. Suddenly, a soft voice broke through the silence, startling her. "Monica," the voice whispered, full of warmth and familiarity. "Don't lose hope." She spun around, searching for the source of the voice, her heart racing. But there was no one there. Only the shadows, shifting and moving like smoke. "Ethan," she called out, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and fear. There was no answer, only the sound of the wind rustling through the leaves. But then, as if in response to her call, the shadows began to gather in front of her, forming a shape, a figure slowly coming into focus. Monica's breath caught in her throat as she realized what was happening. The shadows were forming into the outline of a man, Ethan. His features were faint, almost ethereal, but there was no mistaking it. It was him. "Ethan!" Monica cried, rushing forward, her hands reaching out to touch him. But as her fingers met the shadows, they passed through, like mist dissolving in the air. "Monica!" Ethan's voice was gentle, yet tinged with sadness. "I'm here, but I can't stay. Not in the way you want me to." Monica's heart broke at his words. "Why? Why can't you stay? I need you. I can't keep going without you." Ethan's form flickered, as if struggling to maintain its shape. "I'm bound to the shadows, Monica. I exist in a place between worlds, a place where time doesn't flow as it does here. I can only come to you when the shadows are strongest, but even then, it's only for a short time." Monica felt tears streaming down her face. "It's not fair. Why did we meet if we can't be together?" Ethan reached out, his shadowy hand brushing against her cheek. She felt a faint warmth, a ghost of the touch she had known that night in the forest. We met because our souls are connected, Monica. That connection will never fade, even if we're apart. But you can't let this hold you back. You have a life to live, dreams to fulfill. Don't let the shadows become a cage. Monica shook her head, unable to hold back her tears. But how can I move on? I don't want to live without you. Ethan's form flickered again, his outline becoming more faint. You won't be without me. I'll always be with you in your heart, in your memories. And maybe one day when the time is right, our paths will cross again. Monica's chest tightened with the pain of letting go. I don't want to say goodbye. Ethan smiled, a sad yet tender smile that made her heart ache even more. This isn't goodbye, Monica. It's just until we meet again. With that, the shadows began to disperse, and Ethan's form dissolved into the night. Monica reached out, trying to hold on to him, but it was too late. He was gone, leaving only the cool night air and the sound of the wind whispering through the trees. Monica stood there for what felt like hours, her heart heavy with the weight of her emotions. She felt empty, as if a part of her had been ripped away. The love she had found in Ethan was unlike anything she had ever known. And now that it was gone, she wasn't sure how to move forward. But as the night wore on, a strange calm began to settle over her. The shadows that had once felt cold and distant now seemed to cradle her, as if offering comfort in their own way. She realized that Ethan was right. He wasn't truly gone. He was still with her, in the memories they had created, in the connection that had been forged between their souls. As the first light of dawn began to break through the trees, Monica knew that she had to keep going. She had a life to live, dreams to chase, and even though Ethan was no longer physically by her side, he would always be a part of her. With a deep breath, Monica wiped away her tears and began the walk back to town. The shadows followed her, lingering at the edges of her vision, reminding her of the love that had changed her life. Days turned into weeks, and slowly Monica began to find her way again. She returned to her work, but this time with a renewed sense of purpose. The experience with Ethan had taught her that life was full of mysteries and connections that went beyond the ordinary. She began to look for those connections in everything she did, finding meaning in even the smallest moments. But there were times when the loneliness would creep back in, times when she longed for Ethan's touch, his voice, his presence. On those nights, Monica would return to the forest, standing in the place where they had first met. She would close her eyes, let the shadows wrap around her, and for a brief moment she would feel him there with her. The shadows became her sanctuary, a place where she could find peace and solace in the memory of the love they had shared. And though she never saw Ethan in physical form again, she knew that he was always with her, watching over her, guiding her through the darkness. Years passed, and Monica grew into a woman who was strong, confident, and wise. She had learned to live with the shadows, to embrace them as a part of herself. And in doing so, she had found a sense of fulfillment and joy that she had never known before. But the story didn't end there. For one night, many years later, as Monica stood in the forest, the shadows began to shift once again. She felt that familiar pull, that connection she had thought she would never feel again. And as she turned, she saw him, Ethan, standing before her, as real as the day they had first met. "Monica," he whispered, his voice full of love and warmth. "It's time." Monica's heart swelled with joy and relief. She knew what he meant. The time they had spent apart had been necessary, but now at last they could be together again. As they embraced, the shadows wrapped around them, pulling them into a world beyond the physical, a world where their souls could be truly free. And in that moment, as they kissed under the moonlight, Monica knew that this was the beginning of a new journey. A journey that would take them beyond the shadows, beyond time, and into a love that would last for eternity. And so Monica and Ethan disappeared into the night, leaving behind the world they had known, but carrying with them a love that would never fade. A love that had been forged in the shadows and had become something eternal, something beautiful. In the end, Monica realized that the shadow technique wasn't just about connecting with another person. It was about finding the strength within herself, the strength to love, to let go, and to embrace the unknown. It was about discovering that love could transcend the boundaries of the physical world and become something infinite, something that could never be lost. And as she and Ethan walked hand in hand into the shadows, Monica knew that she had found her true home, a place where love and light coexisted, where the shadows held not fear, but the promise of forever.